we've been discussing in this presentation the importance of articulating the activities of your nonprofit, and where that's really crucial is how do you build that bridge between the inputs, the external factors, all the in-kind resources that your nonprofit is leveraging, to the outputs and ultimately the outcomes that you're projecting to achieve through the logic model, through your grant applications, and just overall communication. So Asia and I will be discussing just some tips, ways to really define what those activities look like, defining the who, what, where, why, and how of these activities to give specificity, make them smart, and measurable, and let funders know exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it, and just ways to connect specific activities to outcomes, and what language is compelling to funders and other stakeholders within your nonprofit network. So I think a lot of folks have this internal sense on like what their activities are, and it's really just kind of how do you refine that and make it tied to specific SMART objectives in your agency. So any tips, any ways that you've really strengthened those ties?
For sure. Always being clear on the why. I think starting with the why becomes important for activities because it's like a reverse engineering method to make sure that you're not confusing your activities with your resources. Because sometimes, specifically when we think about supplies needed to activate a program, you will think that, oh, if I have this supply, meaning resource, then in turn that is the activity because they're using the resource. When we break that down in grant writing and grant proposals and a logic model, that's not the same thing. That's bridging that gap. In terms of what are they going to do with that resource. But again, when I say focus on the why is it important that they have that resource? And that then will steamroll you into what that activity actually is, which separates it from the input.
Absolutely. I think that's really key, and just to show overall purpose and thoughtfulness behind your activities. I would also add the how, and I think that's where you really start to differentiate what makes your nonprofit special compared to other efforts. And one thing I can think of, a nonprofit that I work with closely, refers to folks at their soup kitchen as guests instead of clients, and I think that kind of intentionality shows a level of dignity that they're trying to achieve. And so much of this work is so mission driven. People wear their hearts on their sleeves, and people try to be empathetic with the folks that they serve. And I think this is an opportunity to show that level of care and thoughtfulness. So whether it's accommodating service hours around the schedules from folks that you've surveyed, being multilingual to really make sure that you're reaching out to clients where they're at, different communication channels. I think activities can show a lot with that, and it's not just about tying it to specific outcomes and outputs, but also what activities really strengthen your sense of understanding how you're reaching your community and making sure that it is as accessible as possible.
Absolutely. And then when we think about selecting those activities from a cost-effective standpoint, are there certain activities that you can possibly identify that don't require you as the nonprofit to do something? So when we talk about sustainability of the plan or the program, also, as Anthony mentioned, with the individual that's receiving the support or the service, is there an activity that you can identify where they are doing it independently just by way of the input that you're providing? That makes a difference for your budget, but that also makes a difference in terms of sustainability when we're talking about grant writing and grant proposals as well. So continue to reflect on all these points that we laid out, both in our past experience, but also in things that gravitate from conversations we've had with funders. But specifically, we want you documenting and sharing resources amongst yourselves and amongst your fellow nonprofit staff members. Are you or your current activity descriptions clear and detailed enough, right? So that they're clear to someone that knows nothing about your mission. You always want to come from a place of that. If someone was completely unfamiliar with you or the work that you do, as well as do these activities specify that who, what, when, where, and why, but also, as Anthony expanded upon, that how. That is the activity in and of itself. And then lastly, can you connect each activity to a specific outcome? Because those outcomes are not the same as outputs, as we've so thoroughly talked to you through and about through this module. And so, again, make sure you're sharing resources amongst one another, but also make sure you're taking the time to be mindful for the next grant that you're going after, specifically using that language that's compelling and also credible to the funders that you have on your eye.